In 1932, a janitor in Vermont started buying one stock every month with money he saved from a trick his father taught him during the Depression. When he died in 2014, his estate was worth $8 million. Nobody knew. The trick he used is number 7 on this list, and anyone with a checking account can start it tomorrow. Number 14 was taught in every public school but got quietly removed from the curriculum in 1971. And number 1 has been making ordinary Americans wealthy since before the Civil War. Yet banks spent decades convincing you it does not work anymore. These 20 tricks were not secrets. They were common knowledge, the kind of thing your grandfather told you over the kitchen table. Before we start, hit that subscribe button because what you are about to learn is worth more than any financial advisor will tell you for free. Number 20. The envelope budget. Before credit cards existed, American families ran their entire financial lives on a system so simple it seems almost insulting. Your grandmother would cash her husband's paycheck on Friday afternoon, come home, and divide the bills into labeled envelopes. Rent, groceries, electric, church, savings. Each envelope got its exact share, and when the grocery envelope was empty, you ate what was in the pantry. No exceptions. No borrowing from the rent envelope, no negotiating. In 1955, the average American household earned about $4,400 a year and managed to save nearly 8% of it using nothing but paper envelopes and discipline. That savings rate is higher than what most Americans manage today, even while earning 10 times as much. The system worked because it made money physical. You could feel the envelope getting thinner. You could see Tuesday's dinner budget sitting right there between your fingers. Credit card companies understood this perfectly. The entire business model depends on removing that physical sensation of spending. Tap a card, feel nothing. Open an envelope and count what is left. Feel everything. Dave Ramsey made millions repackaging this as a revolutionary idea. Your great-grandmother did it for free. Number 19. Buying tools instead of paying for services. In 1948, a Sears Craftsman wrench set cost $12.95, roughly a day's wages for a factory worker. But that set could save you $200 a year in mechanic bills, plumber calls, and handyman fees. Your grandfather did not call someone to fix a leaky faucet. He bought a pipe wrench and learned. Not because he was handy by nature, but because paying someone else was money leaving the house that never came back. The philosophy was simple. Every tool you own is a service you never have to pay for again. A $3 caulking gun saved hundreds in weatherproofing. A $9 soldering iron meant you fixed your own radio. Hardware stores in the 1950s sold more tools to homeowners than to professionals because ordinary Americans understood the math. The tool pays for itself the first time you use it, and every use after that is pure profit. Today, Americans spend over $500 billion annually on home services that a basic toolkit and a YouTube tutorial could eliminate. Your grandfather's toolbox was not a hobby. It was an investment portfolio made of steel. Number 18. Growing a kitchen garden. Victory gardens during World War II produced 40% of all vegetables consumed in the United States. The government printed pamphlets showing families exactly how to turn a backyard into a grocery store. But here is what most people forget. Millions of families kept those gardens long after the war ended because they realized the economics were staggering. A single packet of tomato seeds cost 5 cents in 1946 and produced enough fruit to replace $30 worth of store-bought tomatoes over a summer. Families with quarter-acre plots reported saving the equivalent of 2 full weeks of grocery money every growing season. The knowledge passed through generations. Your grandmother knew which crops gave the best return per square foot. Pole beans and zucchini for volume. Herbs for replacing expensive store seasonings. Tomatoes, because store-bought ones tasted like cardboard anyway. The modern equivalent is even more profitable. A $200 raised bed garden can produce more than $600 worth of organic vegetables in a single season. The math has not changed. The dirt has not changed. We just stopped getting our hands in it. Starting in the early 1900s, banks across America offered a simple product that millions of families swore by. You walked into your local savings and loan every week and deposited a small fixed amount, usually 50 cents to $2, into a special account that was locked until December 1st. No withdrawals were allowed. By Christmas, families had $25 to $100 waiting for them, enough to buy presents, a holiday ham, and still have something left over. At its peak in the 1960s, over 17 million Americans had Christmas Club accounts. The trick was not the interest, which was tiny. The trick was the commitment device. Money you could not touch was money you could not spend on impulse. Banks eventually killed the product because they made more money selling credit cards that let you buy Christmas on borrowed money at 18% interest. The Christmas Club cost banks an administrative overhead and earned almost nothing in fees. Credit cards earned billions. The product disappeared not because it stopped working, but because it worked too well for consumers and not well enough for banks. Today, you can recreate this with any automatic savings transfer. The principle is identical. Hide money from yourself on a schedule. Number 16. Buying in bulk during harvest season. Your grandmother did not buy green beans in January at $2 a can. She bought 40 pounds of them in August at 4 cents a pound, and she spent one Saturday canning enough to last until spring. Families with root cellars and pantry shelves treated autumn like a financial event. Bushels of apples at $1.50 from the orchard, 50-pound sacks of potatoes from the farm stand, whole sides of beef bought directly from the rancher, cut, wrapped, and frozen for a fraction of supermarket prices. In 1958, a family that bought and preserved food in season could cut their annual grocery bill by nearly a third. The same math holds today. Buying a quarter cow from a local ranch runs roughly $5 to $7 per pound for every cut, from ground beef to ribeye. Supermarket ribeye alone costs $15 a pound. The trick requires upfront capital and a chest freezer, which is exactly why it favored families who thought in seasons rather than pay periods. Plan ahead, spend once, eat for months. Before the IRS made everything complicated, Americans traded labor like currency. The mechanic fixed the dentist's car. The dentist fixed the mechanic's teeth. Nobody exchanged a dime. In rural communities through the 1940s and 1950s, barter networks were so established that some families went months without spending cash on services. A farmer traded eggs and milk to the local handyman in exchange for a repaired fence. The handyman traded fence repair to the schoolteacher for tutoring his children. Everybody's needs got met, and the money in their pocket stayed right where it was. The trick was knowing your own value. What skill do you have that someone else needs? Your grandfather did not think of himself as having a job. He thought of himself as having abilities, and abilities could be traded anywhere. Today, platforms like Nextdoor and local Facebook groups have accidentally recreated these barter networks. People trade babysitting for lawn care, accounting help for home repairs. The system never stopped working. We just forgot we were allowed to use it. First pattern break. Here is where things get interesting. The tricks so far have been about spending less. The next batch is about making money grow. And this is where America's working class had knowledge that Wall Street later spent decades trying to obscure. Because the truth is, ordinary Americans in the 1940s and 1950s understood compound interest, asset accumulation, and passive income better than most college graduates do today. They just called it by different names. They called it common sense. Number 14. The side hustle before it had a name. In 1962, nearly 1 in 4 American men held some form of second income. Not gig work, not freelance consulting, but actual side businesses run from garages, basements, and kitchen tables. Your grandfather might have been a machinist by day and a furniture refinisher on weekends. Your grandmother sold baked goods, took in sewing, or ran a small mail order business from the classified ads in the back of the Saturday Evening Post. A 3-line classified ad cost 75 cents in 1955 and could generate $50 a month in steady orders. That was serious money when the median household income was $4,400. High schools taught shop class, home economics, and bookkeeping specifically so graduates could run these small operations. When those classes were cut starting in the 1970s, an entire generation lost the practical skills that made side income possible. Today we celebrate the gig economy like it is an invention. Your grandmother was running a gig economy from her kitchen in 1953. She just did not need an app. Number 13. Paying cash and negotiating everything. Your grandfather never paid sticker price for anything in his life. Not a car, not an appliance, not a used lawnmower at the neighbor's yard sale. Cash was king because cash was immediate, and sellers gave discounts for immediacy. Walk into a furniture store in 1960 with $200 in your hand and offer $160. The salesman took it because $160 today beat $200 on layaway that might never get paid. Car dealerships, appliance stores, even doctors offered cash discounts routinely. A 1959 survey found that Americans who paid cash for major purchases saved an average of 12 to 15% compared to those who used installment plans. That is not a coupon. That is a wealth-building strategy. The trick extended to everyday transactions, too. Buying a slightly dented can at the grocery store for half price. Asking the butcher for soup bones that would otherwise be thrown away. Every dollar saved on a purchase was a dollar that could be deposited, invested, or tucked into the savings envelope. We stopped negotiating when fixed pricing and credit cards made it feel awkward. But the leverage of cash in hand has never actually gone away. Try it at a furniture store next Saturday. You will be surprised. In the 1940s and the 1950s, taking in a boarder was one of the most common ways American families supplemented their income. Census data from 1950 shows that nearly 10% of American households had at least one non-family member paying rent under their roof. A spare bedroom brought in $8 to $15 a week, which could cover the entire monthly mortgage payment on a modest home. Families viewed their houses not just as shelter, but as income-producing assets. The boarder got a clean room, shared meals, and access to the household. The family got financial breathing room. It was mutually beneficial and completely normalized. Nobody thought twice about it. When suburban sprawl created larger homes with more bedrooms in the 1960s and the 1970s, the boarder tradition faded. Privacy became the new luxury. Spare rooms sat empty, but the math never changed. Today, Airbnb hosts earn an average of $14,000 a year renting out spare space. Your grandmother earned the equivalent doing the exact same thing 70 years ago. She just did not need a website. Number 11. Buying whole life insurance young. This one is controversial, and financial advisors will argue about it until the sun goes dark. But here is what happened. In the 1940s and the 1950s, working-class families bought small whole life insurance policies on their children, sometimes within weeks of birth. A $5,000 policy on a newborn cost $3 a month in 1950. By the time that child turned 40, the policy had accumulated a cash value they could borrow against for a down payment on a house, a business startup, or an emergency fund. The interest rate on policy loans was fixed and low, often 5%, regardless of what banks were charging. Millions of Americans use these policies as their personal banking system, borrowing from themselves instead of from institutions that could deny them credit. The insurance industry eventually pivoted to selling term, life and investment products with higher fees. Whole life became unfashionable. Financial gurus called it a bad investment. But the families who kept those old policies quietly accumulated wealth that nobody could take away from them. The trick was never about the death benefit. It was about creating a private, guaranteed savings vehicle that grew every single year, no matter what the stock market did. Number 10. Fixing and reselling. Your grandfather could walk into any yard sale, Spot a broken radio, buy it for 50 cents, replace a tube worth a nickel, and sell it for $8 at the flea market the following weekend. This was not a hobby. It was a repeatable money-making system practiced by millions of Americans. Furniture with loose joints got re-glued. Lawnmowers with fouled spark plugs got cleaned. Bicycles with flat tires got patched and painted. The profit margins were enormous because most people threw things away rather than learn to fix them. In the 1960s, swap meets and flea markets were billion-dollar economies, driven by Americans who understood that broken does not mean worthless. It means discounted. The same principle drives the modern reselling economy on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, and Craigslist. A $20 piece of furniture from a thrift store, cleaned and tightened, sells for $150. The skills have not changed. The marketplaces have only gotten bigger. Second pattern break. Now here is something the history books leave out. The wealthiest generation of working-class Americans was not wealthy because of wages. Wages were modest. They were wealthy because of accumulation habits so deeply ingrained they felt automatic. Every trick on this list shares the same DNA. Spend less than you earn. Make what you have work harder. Never pay someone for something you can learn yourself. These were not financial strategies. They were cultural values, passed down at kitchen tables and practiced so consistently they became invisible. The tricks that follow are where those values turned into real generational wealth. In 1957, the average new car cost $2,749. The average used car cost $1,200. Your grandfather bought the used one every single time, and he drove it until the wheels were ready to fall off. He was not being cheap. He was being strategic. A new car lost 25% of its value the moment it left the lot. And he knew that because his father told him, and his father's father told him. The money saved, roughly $1,500 per purchase, went into savings or home improvements that increased property value. Over a lifetime of buying used, a family could save the equivalent of an entire house. The auto industry spent billions on advertising to make new car ownership an emotional identity. You are what you drive. Your grandfather did not buy that identity. He drove a 6-year-old Buick, and he owned his home outright by age 50. Number 8. The layaway mindset. Before credit cards took over in the 1970s, Americans used layaway to buy what they could not yet afford. You picked the item. The store held it. You paid a little each week until the balance was zero, and only then did you take it home. No interest, no debt, no risk. The system forced patience. If you lost interest before paying it off, you got your money back and the purchase never happened. That built-in cooling period eliminated impulse buying entirely. By 1965, layaway accounted for over 30% of department store revenue. Then credit cards arrived, offering instant gratification at 18% interest, and retailers realized they made far more money when customers bought on impulse and paid interest for years. Layaway was deliberately phased out, not because customers stopped wanting it, but because it was too good a deal for the buyer. The mindset, "do not take possession until you can actually afford it," is the single most powerful wealth-building habit on this entire list. A Vermont janitor mentioned in the intro used a dividend reinvestment plan, known as DRIP. Starting in the 1960s, companies like AT&T, General Electric, and Procter & Gamble let small investors buy stock directly, skip the broker, and automatically reinvest their dividends into more shares. No minimum balance, no fees. You could start with a single share worth $30 and let compound interest do the rest. Every quarter, your dividends bought more stock, and those new shares earned more dividends. The cycle accelerated year after year. A $500 investment in Procter & Gamble in 1960, with dividends reinvested, would be worth over $600,000 today. The trick required no expertise, no stock picking, no market timing, just patience and consistency. The janitor in Vermont, Ronald Reed, did exactly this for over 60 years. He bought shares, he reinvested dividends, and he never sold. When he died at 92, the town was stunned to learn the man who wore flannel shirts and drove a used Toyota had quietly accumulated $8 million. Drips still exist today. Most major companies offer them. The trick has not changed in 60 years. It just stopped being taught. County governments have been selling properties delinquent on taxes at public auction since the 1800s. When property owners failed to pay their tax, the county seized the land and sold it to recover the debt. In the 1940s and the 1950s, savvy Americans attended these auctions regularly, picking up vacant lots, small parcels, even houses, for pennies on the dollar. A $5,000 property with $300 in back taxes could be purchased at auction for as little as $300 plus fees. Your grandfather knew the county clerk's auction schedule the way other men knew the baseball schedule. Some families built entire real estate portfolios this way, buying cheap land, holding it, and selling it decades later when the area developed. The system still operates in all 50 states. County tax auctions happen every year. The properties are listed publicly. The bidding starts at the amount of unpaid taxes. Most Americans have never attended one because nobody told them they could. In 1955, a store-bought dress cost $8.95. The fabric to make the same dress cost $1.50, and your grandmother already owned the sewing machine. A wooden bookshelf ran $22 at the furniture store. The lumber cost $4, and your grandfather built it on Saturday morning. This was not about being crafty. It was about understanding the markup. Every product you bought from a store contained the cost of materials, labor, transportation, marketing, retail markup, and profit margin. When you made it yourself, you paid for materials and nothing else. Families that sewed, built, repaired, and preserved kept 60 to 80% of the retail cost in their own pockets. Across a year, that added up to thousands of dollars that stayed in the household instead of flowing out to corporations. The maker economy has come full circle. Etsy sellers, woodworkers, and home sewers are rediscovering what every American household knew in 1955. The cheapest way to get exactly what you want is to make it yourself. Number 4, living below your means on purpose. This was not poverty. This was strategy. Families in the 1950s who earned $5,000 a year lived like they earned $4,000. The missing $1,000 went into savings, property, or investments before a single bill was paid. They drove smaller cars than they could afford. They wore clothes in extra season. They ate at home 6 nights a week, not because they had to, but because they understood that visible wealth and actual wealth were two different things. The neighbor with the new Cadillac was in debt. The neighbor with the old Ford owned 3 rental properties. In the 1950s, the personal savings rate in America peaked at over 10%. Today it hovers around 4%, while household debt has exploded to $17 trillion. The math is not complicated. Your grandparents spent less than they earned on purpose, consistently, for decades. That gap between income and spending was not deprivation. It was the engine that built everything they owned. This trick was so common in the 1940s and the 1950s that real estate agents called it the house hack long before the internet invented the term. A young couple would buy a small duplex or a house with a rental unit. They would live in one side and rent out the other. The rental income covered most or all of the mortgage payment, meaning the family effectively lived for free while building equity. Federal Housing Administration loans after World War II made this especially accessible. A veteran could buy a duplex with almost nothing down. By the time the mortgage was paid off, the family owned the income-producing property outright. Many families repeated this, buying a second duplex, then a third, until they had a small portfolio of rental properties generating passive income for retirement. No pension required, no 401k, just real estate purchased smartly and held patiently. The strategy still works in hundreds of American cities where duplexes sell for reasonable prices. The math has not changed since 1947. Number 2, teaching your children to earn. This was not about child labor. This was about financial literacy transmitted through experience. By age 10, most American children in the 1950s had earned their own money. Paper routes, lemonade stands, mowing lawns, shoveling snow, collecting bottles for deposit refunds. The money was small, but the lessons were massive. Children learned that income requires effort, that saving creates options, and that spending without thinking leaves you with nothing. Families that taught earning early produced adults who managed money instinctively. The paper route kid who deposited half of his earnings every week became the adult who maxed out his retirement account automatically. It was not genetics, it was training. The most powerful financial trick on this list is not a trick at all. It is a parenting decision. Teach a child to earn, save, and invest before they turn 12, and you have given them something no inheritance can match. Number 1. Owning your home outright. This was the ultimate goal of every money-making trick on this list. Not a bigger house, not a fancier house, a paid-off house. In 1960, the average American paid off their mortgage in 15 to 20 years. They made extra payments. They skipped vacations to put lump sums toward the principal. They refinanced only to shorten the term, never to cash out. The day the mortgage was burned, when families literally burned the mortgage paper in the fireplace as a celebration, was the day financial freedom began. Every dollar that had gone to the bank now stayed in the family. A family with no mortgage payment needed dramatically less income to live well. They could retire earlier, work less, give more, and weather any economic storm. The average American mortgage today stretches 30 years. Banks earn more interest the longer you pay. The 15-year mortgage your grandfather insisted on cost the bank decades of profit. That's exactly why nobody recommends it anymore. Every financial trick on this list funneled toward this single outcome. Spend less, earn more, save the difference, pour it into the house, own it free and clear. Then let the money that used to flow to the bank flow into your own future. Your grandparents knew this. Now you know it too. The question is whether you will do what they did or keep scrolling. Try one trick this week, just one. Then come back and tell me if your grandfather was wrong.